This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new program of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenawalt, Senior Fellow for the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Welcome to the show, Maura.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, this show, I think it would be good for us to continue our examination of an issue that we had picked up some time ago, but can have a profound influence, a profound effect upon Pennsylvania and our energy supply. And these are these proposed new EPA regulations regarding coal and the burning of coal, particularly with electricity generating plants. For this, we are very fortunate to have with us Representative Jeff Pyle. Hi, Representative. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you are a good source of information on this particular topic because you are the chair of the the Pennsylvania Coal Caucus.
That's
it
right.
Spans both chambers of the legislature, and it's bipartisan, and it's concerned about all issues having to do with coal.
Absolutely.
Could you talk a little bit about what the Coal Caucus is in a little more detail, and the history, a little bit of just a thumbnail sketch of the history of the Coal Caucus?
I've been in the legislature for 10 years, and Coal Caucus has been there long before my time. What Coal Caucus is a group of concerned legislators who do have considerable economic sectors in their home districts with power plants and with active coal mines and with all the peripheral industries that come up off of that, welding and belt repair and heavy truck. Altogether, coal in Pennsylvania accounts for about 36,000 jobs. And we're a little concerned with the EPA's air regs, as you identified earlier.
Well, how will those new regulations, proposed regulations, affect Pennsylvania?
Very adversely. We're anticipating that not a single coal plant makes it out. And by that we mean shutting down the remaining 13 that got a reprieve on the first round of closures. The subject here, the real bone of contention, is that the air quality standards EPA is trying to promulgate right now are literally not achievable by any technology or methodology on Earth. So that said,
have the scientists said that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have anything that can meet those regulation levels. What we're looking at is a reduction in Pennsylvania's available power supply of up to 38%. Yeah, this one's going to hurt.
Won't they have a direct impact on our cost of energy, the cost for the average household? And
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And where I come from, we still do have heavy industry and steel manufacture and whatnot, and it's just not going to be pretty. There's a speculation that Pennsylvania's fleet of electrical generation, which includes alternative energies, people have suggested maybe they could ramp up their production, but even at their highest output now, they comprise about 1.5%. If we quadrupled them, built 4 times more wind farms, 4 times more solar panels, we'd still only hit 6%, and the magic number here is 38. Until we can hit that number of 38, it's not realistic to say this won't be felt.
Well, the Pennsylvania Coal Caucus is also a member of the Partnership for a Better Energy Future. Can you tell us a little bit about that group and what the sole reason they're in existence for is?
Sure. Partnership for a Better Energy Future is concerned with things that are going on like we're experiencing in Pennsylvania right now. They want to see consistent, cheap, reliable electricity, both for consumers and for business. And they've put together a real nice coalition of business interests, of environmental interests, of consumer groups, chambers of commerce. The group's growing, and rightfully so. If you like cheap, reliable electricity, you should give them a look.
Now, are they fighting these regulations too, or are they focused elsewhere?
To the best of their abilities right now. What you're dealing with is a non-elective body promulgating rules. They don't have to ask permission
by the name
from anybody.
Of the EPA?
Right,
Oh, yeah.
right. So, You know, how do you battle somebody who's not accountable at the ballot box? You know, you can't just vote them out. I think a lot of these people are not seeing the comprehensive picture.
What's the status of the regulations right now?
The regulations have not yet been put into effect. We're looking within the next year to two when they hand these rulings down. It's going to be profound.
Will the effect of these regulations be any greater on Pennsylvania than on any other coal producing state?
That's an excellent question. And if folks want to get a glimpse at the future, they can look to Kentucky and West Virginia, what's going on there. There are entire counties of coal miners in West Virginia that were just sent home. Logan County, West Virginia, which has a really specific high burn value coal with low particulates, their unemployment rate went up about 30% last month because of the guys in the Logan County mines being told they're just not going to be working anymore.
Wow.
Does it affect us? Most definitely. Pennsylvania's been an energy exporter for years and years and years. And it's because we are blessed with a treasure chest of indigenous resources, whether it's coal, gas, whatever. So many of our jobs have been in energy. So yeah, we're going to feel it more so than somebody in Jersey that isn't a real electrical producing state, or somebody in Maryland, you know, that has lesser facilities for generating electricity. We're going to feel it more.
Well, if coal goes out of existence in Pennsylvania, generating power for us, what's going to happen? Will the other sources of energy be able to make up for that?
No.
No.
No. It's a great thought, and I wish I could tell you it will, but that's just not realistic. The only other base generation source that can equal coal's output is nuclear, and the feds aren't permitting them either.
It's interesting. I was just at a conference in Ontario, and they pointed out that they had stopped burning coal for the time being, but they made up for it in nuclear. There was some understanding that if you don't have energy from one source, you need it from the other.
Exactly.
And they were able to go that way. But if we close down 13 coal-firing electricity plants in Pennsylvania, are we going to be subject to electrical brownouts like was the case in the Southwest and in California some years ago?
It's very, very possible. I'm friends with the rep up in Erie, and he tells me they've got selective brownouts began last summer.
In Erie?
Yeah. Yeah, and Erie, that's kind of ironic because it's, you know, everybody's familiar with the wind farms in Somerset line and the ridges, but Erie has a very vibrant wind farm up there, and even with all of that, they're still just not making enough electricity for the consumers.
Wow.
Yeah, it's frightening. And from my area, Pittsburgh, with all those super, super, super high-end hospitals, what do you do?
Well, tell me, what can be done? I know the General Assembly recently took some action. So what's the plan? How are we going to stop this?
Well, the EPA has told us these regs are inbound. They're coming. They had also originally helped.
Did they get any input on those when they were working on them?
They had 3 or 4 hearings throughout the country. Okay. I was privy to one that Doc Hastings, who chairs the Federal House Energy Committee, asked me to come
Did they
down.
have a hearing in Pennsylvania?
Yes, they had it right over in North Office Building here in Harrisburg. Congressman Thompson, Congressman Perry were both there. It was pretty. It's a big deal for us. I mean, we've I don't want to say been spoiled, but we've always enjoyed consistent, reliable energy, and every time we flipped that switch, the lights came on. Not exaggerating, we are past that now, and we're rapidly approaching a time where the lights won't come on. So how do you look at somebody who's got a freezer full of meat and, you know, sorry, your turn to be rolled into a brownout is here, and, you know, do you just take the loss? What do you do? What I'm concerned about, yeah, a lot of people will say industry's going to suffer, and it's doubtless it will. heavy manufacturing that's electrically dependent they're walking on pins and needles right now. What are they going to do? I'm worried about Joe and Susie, Pennsylvania, losing that freezer full of meat or not being able to make the lights come on.
Well, how much leeway does Pennsylvania have in putting these regulations in place? Does the General Assembly have any power over EPA proposal?
One of the rulings that came out of EPA is when the Supreme Court got a hold of it, they told EPA they could not dictate to us how we brought Pennsylvania into compliance with the air regs.
The state Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court?
The U.S. Supreme Court, yeah. They left it to the states to come up with compliance plans, and recently House Bill 2354 moved, which would give the legislature an ability to monitor what our DEP is coming up with for a plan.
Oh, so that would...
We get input in it.
Okay, but it sounds like we might have a little bit more than just input. If we can pretty much influence our future? That's realistic. Okay.
I'll tell you what I tell everybody. Reach out to your elected people. Me, it's preaching to the choir. I've got power plants where I live, and a lot of people work there, and it's a good living and not minimum wage stuff. These are jobs that let you buy the prom dress for your daughter or pick the school they go to instead of, you got to go here. We have an awful lot of coal miners, and again, those are very good jobs. And if you would come to Katanning or Ford City, you would see their presence everywhere. They're very, very valuable members of the community, and to think that something we've been doing very successfully for over 100 years is on the chopping block is just unacceptable.
Is there a better plan than the plan proposed by the EPA?
I think EPA would be well advised to come up with numbers that science could actually achieve. We can sit here and speculate about what a wonderful world it would be, but the fact of it is people like up with a better way to do it. Far and away, the most economical way to generate electricity is by coal.
Okay. Well,
it's interesting that a lot of people see the bad environmental back end of that, but since 1990, over 90% of everything that was coming out of those stacks has been dropped to the ground. And, it's amazing when you watch the Steelers on Monday Night Football. People like to throw that old picture of the old steel mills where you couldn't see the point from Mount Washington. And now it's a thing of the past. You have to go read history books.
Well, we want to thank you for sharing your time with us and sharing your story with us. We'd hope to have you back, Representative, and see how this unfolds. Certainly the word nullification might be something that we might be talking about in the future. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see.
You're reading my mind, Charlie. Stop it.
We'll be right back with the second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions to make the commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States, and by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to Behind the Headlines. On the second segment of Behind the Headlines, we're going to do an Arnold report, and we're fortunate enough to have with us the chairman of Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, Ed Arnold. Ed, welcome back to the show. It's nice to see you, too. Why, today we're going to take a little different approach in terms of the substance of the Arnold report in comparison to Arnold reports in the past. Right now, throughout the world, throughout the nation, and throughout our state, there's increasing concern about one issue, and that one issue is Ebola. There's a lot of uncertainty as to what it is, how it's spread, and what we should be doing about it. Last week, well, just a few weeks ago, Governor Corbett had the first meeting of his team in Harrisburg. How is the state of Pennsylvania going to prepare if Ebola shows up here? I understand the hospitals in Pennsylvania have been doing the same thing. Let's take a little bit a look with you. What has the federal government been doing? How's the federal government preparing for this new potential epidemic?
Unfortunately, I guess we could say, how's the federal government failing? There is lack of transparency, and really there is almost misinformation, because people are supposed to not think it's a problem. Right now, one of the biggest areas is how is it contracted. There are two nurses that got the disease actually in Dallas. Mm-hmm. We don't know how they got it. Now there's conjecture. Well, this wasn't perfect or that wasn't perfect. One of the problems is that Dallas was not a hospital that was equipped to handle this. There is only a handful of hospitals in this country equipped.
In fact, I think the numbers tell us that I've heard until recently there were only 11 beds in this the whole country that were equipped to handle Ebola patients the way they should be.
That is correct. And what it seemed to be, what's shown is that in some of the places where they were equipped to handle it, the people have survived. So it's a series of things of what exactly is curing people, those that have survived. Different ones have been given different vaccines, medicines, whatever, but they're not sure they worked, because all they know is the person survived. One of the themes that they seem to be very heavy on is it should be hydrated. If you come out with anything, it tends to dehydrate you, and you should drink lots and lots of liquids. That is one common thing, that rather than the fancy medicines, just simply liquids.
Well, I've heard of two different approaches that have worked. One was we've taken blood transfusions from people who have survived Ebola and given those to some people. That's allowed them to survive. The other one was a serum that had been prepared by one of the drug companies here, which I believe we're completely out of now. We've used all that existed, and that incorporated a specific strain of tobacco from Kentucky.
So well, that's what I talked about. They don't really know if it worked. They know the person survived, but they don't know why. The other part you talked about is correct, that it appears that somebody has survived it, their blood will now have some anti-resistance and antibodies in it that will basically do the job. That makes some sense. So again, the thing is we don't really know. One of the other areas that's very, very unfortunate is Obama, in his lack of wisdom, has decided to present a czar. But instead of putting a competent person like Lieutenant General Hunter, who has tremendous experience, he's a 4-star general, 37 years in the military, he's now devoted himself to controlling things in the case of chaotic situations.
Infectious diseases.
Infectious diseases and so on. There's also a very competent doctor at Cleveland Clinic, Cosgrove. Well, who is he appointed? A political hack, who has absolutely no skill set in this area whatsoever. He's there to cover Obama's backside.
Well,
that's all he's been
I have to say for a moment, Cosgrove, Dr. Cosgrove, I have personal experience with. He saved my life in 1999. And it was my heart surgeon. But he was not only the best heart surgeon in the world, but he became head of the Cleveland Clinic. When President Obama wanted to show the excellence of the American medical establishment, he went to Cleveland and he stood beside of Dr. Cosgrove. When he needed someone to head up the VA in this recent VA scandal, he asked Dr. Cosgrove to do it, and Cosgrove said, no, I have too much on my hands now. But interestingly enough, he didn't go back to Cosgrove to tap into some medical expertise with this situation, Ed.
Well, the other thing is right now, a federal protocol. I happen to know very well the chief medical military person in West Virginia. He has written up and spent a tremendous amount of time on a protocol of what the state of West Virginia is to do. And actually, a lot of other states have asked him, they want to look at this because they might copy it. Why isn't there a federal protocol? Each state should not be doing their own. The federal government should have done it in they haven't done it, so the states are being forced to do it individually.
And West Virginia is one of the leaders.
That's correct. That is very, very interesting. Now, the other area, which again, if you talk to, what is one of the success stories in this process, is Nigeria. Nigeria had a breakout. They quarantined people. They restricted travel. They basically did a lot of simple things, very frankly, but common sense things. And 2 people died. The others got cured, and there's no problem there anymore. What are we doing? The exact opposite. We're saying continue to travel. Don't worry about it. And that basically, we're right now, 30 to 35 countries have restricted travel, air travels in their countries, including China and Europe.
From West Africa.
And also in Africa itself. Yet we're saying no, which obviously is a lack of common sense.
The interesting thing is Senegal, too. On the other end, you had Nigeria in the south and Senegal on the north of, right beside of Liberia. And they had one case, they found him, they quarantined him, they treated him, they closed their borders, and they cut off all air travel for the time being, and they've controlled it. When it's pretty much on the verge of being out of control in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. Doctors Without Borders has taken the lead in trying to address this, and they are undermanned and underfunded. And the World Health Organization is just there to coordinate, and they're not bringing the resources that are necessary to deal with this in those West African countries.
And what also doesn't make sense, we are sending military people. According to one rumor I heard, they're actually going to send part of the 82nd Airborne. That they should be sending engineers if they want to build hospitals. They should be sending medical units if they want to try to treat people. Why are they sending regular troops which are qualified to do neither?
Well, I'm a little alarmed at this point. Maybe it'll change, but at this point I understand that they're not even going to have hazmat suits. Now, maybe they're not going to be coming into contact with infected people, but how can one be sure of that? I would hope that there would be some availability of hazmat materials to these troops so they have some protection, and I hope they'll be properly trained, Ed.
Well, and that's what it appears that, again, we're just simply shooting from the hip, and we're going to send somebody there to make it look good, and there's not really any substance because there's no real plan. What are they going to do, and how well equipped are they to do it?
Mm-hmm. Well, Liz Peek in the Fiscal Times recently on October 15th, she put out an argument that the only reason the United States wasn't cutting off air travel from these 3 countries was that President Obama was concerned about his popularity in Africa. And by keeping those flights going, that he thought his popularity would stay up, because the most popular American in sub-Saharan Africa is George W. Bush. And President Bush was popular because he increased funding over 12-fold for anti-AIDS drugs, and he's saved millions of African lives. President Obama is not as popular, and many advisors and observers just can't understand why we haven't closed air traffic from West Africa. Ed.
Now, what
about the definition of Ebola?
Well, Ebola actually, first of all, it's a virus. And it's actually a family of viruses. The original virus name was Marburg, which came out of Germany, and it happened there because of animals. It comes from bats, and monkeys are the most common transmitters. And they did some research, and it broke out. And then you got Ebola, which also they found is actually named after a river in the Congo, named the Ebola River. Again, it broke out there, and it changes. Viruses tend to move as far as they have certain characteristics, and they evolve. They evolve very quickly. That's what, again, expecting this magic vaccine or cure is very improbable, because by the time you get it's like the flu. By the time you figure out this is what will stop it, it's moved on to something else.
I understand that supposedly this Marburg, which is a strain of Ebola, the true Ebola will liquefy your body within 3 days. But this,
especially a corpse.
What we have in America now is a strain of Ebola called Marburg, And indeed, this supposedly, the virus mutates after it's in every person. So you must be right. It's very hard to get a handle on it.
I mean, that's what's how, as far as how it is gotten. The fact is that the body is liquid. When you touch something, your oils in your skin leave a residue that can last for up to 48 hours. So somebody else touching that, they didn't touch you, they touched what you touched, and therefore they could get, in fact, contaminated. So really, how it is spread is still a little bit of a question mark, but the point is, that's why this concern, this person that was flying, they touched X number of things in the plane, and the plane hasn't been treated. Now the planes have, actually, but this was a week after the fact. And so allowing travel, if a person is sick, they may not be very honest. They want to get out of the infected area. They're not concerned about what their effect they'll have in the United States.
Yeah. What are some of the symptoms of Marburg or of Ebola?
Well, basically, the most common we talk about is a fever, but also headache, chills, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, internal bleeding. The actual internal bleeding is actually the most critical thing, because what Ebola does, it attacks the blood vessels in the body and it causes them to leak. When they leak, it lowers the blood pressure, which is actually in many ways the fatal thing. But also the immune system, too late, because it tricks the immune system originally, attacks and actually it kills the Ebola and it kills you too. Mm-hmm. So there's a combination of things that are happening.
What risk factors do we have in 30 seconds? And we have about a minute left.
Well, the risk factors obviously are coming in contact of somebody who's had it. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest single area, but also there is question whether it can't be semi-airborne. There's been some researchers have said it is not just the liquid, but of course when you cough or sneeze, you're putting a liquid into the air. So that, again, it becomes quite complicated as to the biggest thing we should do. We should not be traveling unless you absolutely have to. You definitely, if there's any animals that we're doing research on, we should obviously be restricting that. And the people that are taking care of the sick obviously have to take extreme precautions, and that's one of the problems where it's spread in Africa, because they have this thing about touching the bodies, doing this, doing that. So that overall, we're basically we've got to really use a little common sense here and realize this, we don't know how contagious things are, and be careful.
All right. We want to thank you for sharing that information with us. We hope that that'll help our viewers understand this disease better, and we'll see how the state and the federal government continue to deal with this. Ed, thank you for coming and being with us today. We'll be back again with you next week on Behind the Headlines. Tune in then.